Long ago, in a small village, nestled between rolling hills and stretching fields, there lived a man named Jonah. The villagers spoke often of his wisdom, for Jonah was known as a prophet, one who walked close to God, sharing messages and stories that shaped the hearts of many. But Jonah was not like the other prophets. He carried a heavy burden, a fear that gnawed at his heart, one that would soon change the course of his life. The winds in the village were quiet, but beyond the village, a storm was brewing, an unseen storm that would push Jonah into the depths of his own fears. You see, God had a mission for Jonah, one that seemed impossible, dangerous, and overwhelming. Nineveh, a great and powerful city, was filled with wickedness and sin. Its people had turned their hearts away from the Creator, and it was Jonah's task to go and warn them. God spoke to Jonah, his voice full of authority but also of love. "Jonah," God said, "go to Nineveh and tell them that in 40 days their city will be destroyed unless they turn from their evil ways." But Jonah, instead of accepting the task, felt fear wash over him like a cold, relentless wave. Nineveh was vast, its people cruel and unforgiving. How could one man, a mere prophet, ever hope to change such a city? What would they do to him? And so, Jonah did the only thing he could think of. He ran. Jonah fled to the port, found a ship that would carry him far from Nineveh, and set sail, his heart racing with the adrenaline of escape. He thought that by putting the sea between him and his mission, he could outrun God's call. He believed he could hide from the very one who had created the heavens and the earth. But as the ship sailed farther into the vast ocean, Jonah could not escape the growing anxiety in his chest, nor the growing weight of his disobedience. As if to answer Jonah's flight, the sky darkened. Winds howled, and thunder cracked across the heavens, sending waves crashing against the ship's hull. The sailors aboard, skilled in navigating the seas, knew something was terribly wrong. The storm grew fiercer with each passing moment, the waves rising higher, threatening to swallow the ship whole. The men panicked, calling out to their gods, desperate for salvation. But Jonah knew the storm was no accident. It was the wrath of God, sent to stop him from running. The fear that had driven him to flee was now replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. Jonah stood up, looking out over the water, feeling the weight of his disobedience. He knew that the storm was his fault. With a heavy heart, Jonah spoke to the sailors. "Throw me into the sea," he said, his voice trembling with the truth he could no longer deny. "It is I who have caused this storm. If you throw me overboard, the storm will cease and you will be safe." The sailors hesitated. They were reluctant to cast a man into the angry sea, but the storm raged on, relentless. Finally, with no other choice, they prayed to God for forgiveness and threw Jonah into the turbulent waters. The moment Jonah hit the sea, the storm stopped. The waves calmed, the wind died, and the sky cleared. The sailors witnessing this miracle were struck with awe. They bowed before God, offering sacrifices and making vows to serve him. But Jonah, now sinking into the deep, was far from salvation. He was alone, lost in the cold, dark waters of the sea. The depths of the ocean swallowed him whole, but Jonah was not lost to the waters. God had a plan for him still. In that moment of despair, a great fish, like none Jonah had ever seen, swallowed him whole. Jonah was plunged into the darkness, swallowed by his own fear and rebellion. Inside the belly of the great fish, Jonah was trapped. Darkness surrounded him. The air was thick and heavy, and he could feel the pulse of the fish's body as it moved through the waters. For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah lay there, alone with his thoughts, his regrets, and his shame. In that suffocating darkness, Jonah finally came to understand the magnitude of his mistake. He had fled from God, but God was with him still. Even in the depths of the ocean, Jonah could feel the presence of God, not as a wrathful force, but as a loving reminder that it was never too late to return. With a broken heart, Jonah prayed. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Jonah 2:1-7. In the darkness, Jonah repented. He promised that if God would give him a second chance, he would obey. He would go to Nineveh no matter what it took, and God, in his mercy, answered. The great fish, as if guided by a divine hand, swam toward the shore, and with a mighty force, Jonah was cast onto dry land. He lay there, breathing in the air of life once more, grateful for the second chance he had been given. Jonah stood on the shore, trembling but resolute. He knew his task was not finished. The people of Nineveh, lost in their sin, were waiting. God had not given up on them, and Jonah could not turn his back now. Jonah walked the long road to Nineveh, a city so vast it would take him 3 days to cross. As he entered the gates, his heart pounded with fear. His voice barely a whisper, yet full of power and truth. He cried out to the people, 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed unless you turn from your evil ways. The people of Nineveh, at first skeptical, began to listen, and then something miraculous happened. The king, hearing Jonah's warning, repented. He called for a fast, urging his people to turn from their sins, and the people, from the poorest to the richest, responded. They prayed for forgiveness, they changed their hearts, and they turned to God. And God, in his infinite mercy, saw their repentance. He spared the city. Nineveh was saved. Jonah, watching the city transform before his eyes, sat outside the city, in the shade of a tree, but his heart was conflicted. He was overjoyed that Nineveh had been spared, but at the same time he felt bitterness and frustration. Why, he wondered, had God shown mercy to these people? Why, after all their wickedness, had they been spared? And God spoke to Jonah. Jonah, is it right for you to be angry? Should I not show mercy to those who have turned from their evil ways? And Jonah, sitting beneath the tree, began to understand. God's mercy was not just for the righteous, it was for all who turned to him in repentance. The lesson was clear. God's love knows no bounds, his forgiveness is endless, and his grace is available to all. Jonah, humbled, rose from the shade and looked out over the city. Nineveh was saved, and he had been a part of that miracle. From that day on, Jonah learned that God's plan, though mysterious and sometimes difficult to understand, always leads to redemption. He had run from his calling, but God had not given up on him. He had learned that God's love is stronger than any fear, any rebellion, and any mistake. And Jonah, the reluctant prophet, became one of the greatest messengers of mercy the world would ever know. And so Jonah's journey, though filled with struggles and trials, ultimately leads us to a profound truth. It is a story that echoes across time, reminding us all of the power of redemption and the depth of divine mercy. Jonah, a man who tried to escape his purpose, who ran from the very mission God set before him, found in the end that God's love was greater than his fears, greater than his doubts. Despite his mistakes, despite his flaws, Jonah was given the opportunity to make things right, to be the instrument of change and salvation in a world so desperately in need of it. And through him, Nineveh was saved. It is a reminder to us all, no matter where we are in life, no matter how far we feel we've strayed, or how difficult the road ahead may seem, there is always a path to redemption. Like Jonah, we may struggle with our own fears, with doubts about our worth or even our purpose, but the truth remains. God's grace is boundless. His forgiveness is endless. There is no heart too far gone, no soul too broken that cannot be healed and restored. Jonah's story teaches us that no matter how many times we fall, we can rise again. It tells us that second chances are not just possible, they are promised. It shows us that sometimes it's not the journey that matters, but the courage to take the first step toward change. Thank you for joining us in this incredible journey. We hope that Jonah's story has inspired you to reflect on your own path, your own challenges, and the endless possibilities that await when we embrace the grace that is always there for us. If you enjoyed this tale of faith, redemption, and The power of mercy. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with your friends and family so that together we can spread the message of hope and forgiveness. Let's share these timeless lessons with the world, because everyone deserves to know that no matter where they are, they can always find their way back. Stay connected, stay hopeful, and remember, no journey is too long and no heart is too lost. Until next time, thank you for watching, and may you always be guided by the light of grace.